Hi, Sarima. I'm just going ahead and setting this up. Give me 1 second. I'm also going to be recording this, so in case any of the mentorship students miss it tonight, I can send it to them. All right, so we're just going to give it a minute. Let me get this thing. All right, is no one else here? Let me just make sure. Connection timed out. Oh my gosh. Mercury retrograde, let me tell you. Can you guys hear me? Wait, I'm on the screen. Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you, just your photo, no video.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll take that off in a second. I'm trying to, oh, I gotta take the music off. Haha.
It sounds lovely.
I found binaural beats for physical healing of the body. So
that's amazing. I listen to that when I sleep.
Yeah, so I've been listening to it just all day. I'm like telling my body.
Good for you.
Heal.
Yeah, this is how it's going to go.
yeah, just work it.
Yeah, for sure.
How's everybody doing? Enjoying this lovely retrograde. Zarima, how'd you do today in your test? Oh wait, we can't hear you. You're muted. Hold on. Let me unmute you.
There you go.
Yeah.
I passed the two-part test. Okay, it's a two-part test. I passed the state part, which is hard, so I don't get it. Like how I passed that one. And the other one I missed by 3 questions.
Oh. But being that you passed state, you don't have to do state again, right?
I have to do state again, yeah. And that's the hardest one because they only give you 40 questions.
Oh
wow.
So you have to put, you can't fuck up.
Yeah.
40 questions, yeah. The other one is 9 questions. Missed by 3 questions. That's how I didn't pass it by 3 questions. But it's okay because I'm gonna kill it next time. I'm going back on.
Good girl.
Yay.
That's awesome. All right. Well, I'm glad because I had you on my mind all day today. I was like, let her pass. So I'm glad that you passed. All right, ladies. So this is Jamie. Welcome. We're doing a class on energetic protection for self. And Steph and Zarima are in my mentorship program. So that's why they're on, because they missed class. So this is their way of making up. So I have a webinar. So what you guys are going to do is just go ahead and mute yourself. It's going to be recording. So if you want to, take your camera off, you're more than welcome to. And then after I record and everything, I will stop the recording and then we can talk about it, or you guys can bring up questions. But you can also bring up questions during the whole thing. So even if you like Steph doesn't have her camera on, she's muted. But if while I'm going through the presentation, like you have a question or a comment, just unmute yourself, unmute yourself. Yeah. And just ask your question or type it in the comments. Though once I have the webinar up, sometimes I see the comments, sometimes I don't. So if you type it in the comments and I don't see it, just unmute yourself and ask me. All right. All right. So you can go ahead and mute yourselves and let me go ahead and start recording. All righty. Welcome, everyone. This is Uma coming to you live, February 2020. We are doing this class on energetic protection of self. And I do have a PowerPoint. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start the PowerPoint. Okay. So I came up with this class like about 2-3 years ago because there's so much misconception in the community, in the spiritual community, about energy. And I really wanted to clear the air because a lot of things I'm going to talk about tonight, it may go against your belief. I'm going to start with that. It may go against what you've been taught. And here's what I'm going to tell you, which is what I tell all my classes: take what you can, leave the rest. Okay. What I'm going to share with you has come from my own personal knowledge and has come from my experience as a spiritual teacher for the past now 11 years, come March 2020. So it's just, that's it. I don't have an agenda in this. I'm not trying to hurt people or their feelings or make them feel bad. I just want you to know what I know. And hopefully it empowers you. It empowers you to rise beyond these restrictions or limiting beliefs. Because once you start talking about energy, you know, sometimes we can feel like things can happen to us without our consent. And that's not a true story. Okay. So I did create this webinar for you, but I might type in things because you know me, I'm channeling. And as we go along, things might come in, you know, spirit reminding me like, hey, mention this. So you might see me typing on some of this as well. So the first thing is, let's discuss the objectives of this webinar. It's very simple. We're going to discuss things that are related to energy and energy protection, such as entities and earthbound spirits. You know, most times people ask me a lot about ghosts, goblins, spirits, because I am a medium. So we're going to have a really in-depth talk about what entities are, earthbound spirits, and what you need to know concerning energy protection with that. We're also going to talk about psychic vampires, direct and indirect psychic attacks. And if you haven't heard those terms, actually good, because it's not going to take up too much percentage of your lifetime or your brain. So if you don't know these terms, then that's perfect. We're going to talk about how a block actually develops in the aura. And I usually go that over with my Reiki students. When I'm teaching them Reiki, I bring in this part about the anatomy of a block, if you will. And we will talk about the way as Eastern and Western healers deal with these blocks. Western healers being doctors, nurses, the medical staff, right? Eastern healers being energy healing practitioners, maybe yoginis, massage therapists, things of the like. Then we're going to talk about the vibrational energy scale and share, finally, we're going to end out with some energy protection techniques. So it's going to be a full webinar. And as we go along, if you guys have questions, please feel free to unmute yourself, ask the question, or you can just type it in the chat box and then, you know, hopefully I'll receive it, I can see it, and we can bring it up in discussion. So the first thing that we're going to really talk about is the entities and the earthbound spirits. Oh, there's so much I can say on this. Like I literally can take up a whole hour talking about entities and earthbound spirits being a medium. But this is what I'm going to tell you. In the line of work that we do with spirits, ghosts, you know, earthbounds, it's easy to get carried away with what other people say or other people's experiences. But just for a second, I want you guys to go logical here with me and not get too tied up with the non-logical. And I just want you to go on a journey with me. Let's just say that you have been afflicted your whole life with mental issues, right? To the point where you might hurt people or even kill people or just hurt yourself. When you die, and from 98% of near-death experiences around the globe, it's safe to say we've established that when you die, there is a portal of a bright white light. There's usually somebody that you love that comes to collect you. So let me ask you this. If you are a crazy person or insane person or just a person with mental issues, and you are really restricted and conflicted on earth, when you die, do you think you're going to choose to stay that person? Or are you going to choose to walk away from that and to go with your loved ones into this light that's warm and welcoming and you feel safe? And that's the logical part of this. Okay. So there is no such thing actually as an earthbound spirit, or if there's earthbounds, we need better literature on why an earthbound chooses to stay, especially in pain and turmoil and torment on this planet when they actually have the option to leave. And some things can come up about that, right? So you want to be aware of this. Now, what happens when we die? When we die, we go to different realms, and that's in the literature too. There's Andrew Jackson Davis, the Magic Staff. There's the Astral City. I can't remember who wrote that. There's so many accounts of there being different realms on the other side when you die. And the realm you go to is based on your consciousness. Now, your consciousness is within you. Okay, it's the way you think, it's what you feel, it's your impressions, your memories, that's your consciousness. When you die, you leave the physical body behind, but the consciousness, your thinking part of you, the way you operate is going on. That's what's moving on to the next side. So if you're a person who's just been like living off of social media, doing selfies all day, every day, #grateful, right? Don't really care about anybody else or not really contributing to society or service or anything. You're just all about you. When you die, you're probably not going to go up into the higher realms to have conversations with people like Jesus or Gandhi or Buddha, right? That's fair to assume. You're probably going to be on the lower realms, and you got to work through that selfishness to become more selfless, or to at least increase your knowledge about everything else. Most of you that are watching this are probably going to be up in the higher realms. And I say that because you've actually started doing your research, your studying, and your betterment of yourself, which is the whole point of the Earth School. It's for us to get better, to become better. We're all born into our bondage or sin, whatever that is. And then we have to work through it, right? And the whole point of the game is to evolve. So if you're here and you're not evolving, you're just doing the day in, day out, all day, every day, then when you go over on the other side, you have a lot of learning to do. And that's why I tell my students, it's so good that you guys are taking your classes now and learning and expanding and growing and fixing and healing and forgiving, because you have a better chance of skipping all these same lessons that you're learning here on the other side, because you're going to get to go higher. So what I believe, and some of my teachers believe about Earthbounds. Now, has everybody heard what an Earthbound is? Do you know what an Earthbound is? An Earthbound spirit is said to be a spirit that died and then roams the earth. Like they don't go over to the other side. It's kind of like they're stuck in limbo. They're between this earth and the other realms, and they're just stuck here. So that, ever since I heard it, even before I started doing my learning, that didn't make sense to me. Because if I don't have a body, what could keep me here, right? Like nothing could keep me here. So I'm going to go. So I couldn't understand Earthbounds. And then I came across beautiful teachers and mentors who expounded more on this about the realms on the other side. And what I've read is that the lowest realm on the other side is for people who are still suffering with afflictions. On the grand scheme of things, you might find Hitler there. Probably not anymore. He's probably worked through his stuff. On the lesser scheme of things, you might find people with depression or anxiety, things that they have not worked through, or somebody who had a heartbreak or an addiction, right? They're going to be in that lower realm. So it can look as if there are earthbound spirits because they're so close to us, right? And it's a heavier energy. Sometimes, like if you have clairvoyance, they'll say, oh, I saw like a shadow. It was like gray. Or they might say, I saw like a black entity, you know, like a shadow form or figure. And that's fine, right? They can't hurt you because, again, going back to this energy thing, just by law of physics, they can't hurt you. They are gas, if you will, and we're solid. So they can't really manipulate anything to hurt us either. Okay. So I say that because a lot of times at my center, I get people who come to me and say, I have a negative entity attached to me. And I say, well, did you give it permission? No. Well, then there's no negative entity attached to you, because we do have this little simple thing called free will, and free will follows natural law, and the natural laws of the universe trumps man-made laws, because natural laws exist. They exist as part of the planet and as part of the living process of living. So if you have a negative entity attached to you, probably you invited it in or you want it there, because I can't see or understand how an entity can attach to you without your permission. That's the first thing. The second thing, if you're feeling, sensing spirit in your room, on the street, whatever, and it feels a little scary to you, it's probably not an earthbound. It's probably somebody who passed. They're dealing with their addictions, their afflictions, and they're working through them. Okay. So that's the first thing I want to talk about with this energetic protection for self webinar, because that's the majority of questions I get is, can entities harm me? My simple answer is no, entities cannot harm you. And you have to, again, think about it from the perspective of an entity. Someone who died and is on the other side, why would they care about harming you? They don't have that care anymore. A lot of fear and a lot of the lower emotions that we feel, fear, anger, betrayal, revenge, that dies with the body, because your consciousness is a higher level of being. So all those things people feel, they don't feel so much more when they go over on the other side. And the more they're on the other side, the more they get acclimated to remembering who they really were. So like it might drop away. So let's say you did have a little old granny who, you know, loved her chinaware and her porcelain and whatever. Maybe when she crosses over, maybe, you know, for a bit, she might be concerned about those things. But the more she's out of her body and the more she's on the other side, the more she's going to remember, I'm an unlimited being. Why do I care about a teacup? Right? I'm just going to let this stuff go. And that's what happens. They let it go. Any questions on this or any comments, anything you want to contribute about entities and earthbound spirits? Okay. So that's the first thing we're talking about with energetic protection of self. You don't have to worry about entities and earthbound spirits. They don't exist. And if they do exist, but they don't exist to harm you or hurt you. Even if you guys had a vendetta while you were alive, like you and your neighbor dies, they don't care. They have bigger things to concern themselves with, mainly their salvation, right? Like, what is this all about? Especially if you're not a person who's thinking about that while you're alive, then they have to come to grips with all of that when they're on the other side. Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about is psychic vampires and direct and indirect psychic attacks. Psychic vampires are people who take energy from you, and they can either do it directly or indirectly. Most psychic vampires that you will know or come across tend to be people that don't know that they're doing it. I have a lot of students that are psychic vampires. They're not aware of it, but at the same time, it's not done in a malicious way. A psychic vampire is just wanting your energy. So like, for instance, in my situation with students, I will have them write like books, you know, on Facebook to me, like large, long things. Or if they see me on Facebook Messenger, they'll write something. I'll write a quick reply. They write back. I'll try to end it with a quick reply. They write back, you know, it's just like that whole, and I'm like, I just needed to answer your question. I don't need to have a conversation here, especially if it's like late at night or early in the morning. So psychic vampires tend not to have boundaries. They tend not to be thoughtful, right? Because like if I have a student who reaches out to me at like 12 o'clock at night, they see me on Facebook. It's probably because I can't sleep. So I'm just scrolling and they see me and they write me something. And if it's an urgent question, I'm going to answer it. But there's no thoughtfulness there. Like, oh, you know, Uma took some time out of her personal life to answer this for me. Let me just be okay with that. They're going to jump right into like, let's start a conversation, right? So for most of it, psychic vampires don't know what they're doing. They're kind of like self-absorbed and they're not aware of how they're affecting other people. So that's why I tell my students, like, don't get too offended with people in your life. Try to see where they're coming from. Most psychic vampires have a backstory. They weren't given enough love. They weren't given enough attention. So they tend to feel ignored or not worthy. So when they have someone that comes along that showers them with love, or even just share love or exudes love towards them, it can be overwhelming. And they can just kind of like say, I want more, I want more, I want more. And they don't have that boundary of saying, let me put a stop to this. Let me be content with what I've received. But what you want to determine is if a psychic vampire in your life is a direct one or an indirect one. Like I said, maybe 90% of people that are psychic vampires are indirect. They're shooting you with this poisonous energy, or they're taking from you without knowing. How can someone shoot you with poisonous energy without knowing? Envy, jealousy. Oh, look at her. She has, always with the new clothes and this and that. They're just thinking, right? But that's like almost like negative arrows coming your way because of the energy behind the thought and the intention behind the thought. So that can literally derail you. And if you're not careful and your vibration's not high, that can really affect you. And we're going to talk about that, because my ways of dealing with this stuff is really something very simple that I'm going to teach you, that Spirit gave to me. And it's clearly worked, because if anything, one thing people say about Uma is what? I'm strong, you're so powerful. And it's really the simple technique that I'm going to share with you guys a little bit later on. So indirect psychic vampires, indirect psychic attacks are done in that way. People really, they don't want to hurt you. They're just thinking, and in their thinking, they're sending that kind of energy your way. A psychic attack is when the energy is no longer contained within that person and it moves outwards in a specific direction. I get a lot of indirect psychic attacks on the daily. And one of the things is when you grow spiritually and psychically, you're going to start hearing people's thoughts. So that's why I think a lot of spiritual people get called eccentric, because they're having full-on conversations already without the other person knowing, or even just opening their mouth. So they're kind of like done with a person and they're like, what did I do to them? They've had like a full conversation. So a psychic attack comes towards you. Now there is a direct attack. That is a person who purposely wants to hurt you. Like, for instance, spells. If somebody wanted to do a spell on you, or do a ritual, or like actually stick their foot out to trip you, that's like a direct attack, right? Now, people ask me, can a psychic attack hurt me? Can a spell, be put on me? And I'm going to tell you what I told you from the last slide. No, it can't. You have free will. So I learned that at a very young age. When I was about 11 or 12 in my country, they had people we call it obia. Over here, they call it voodoo, but we have people that practice the old religions and practice obia. And I remember there was a part of time in Guyana where we were finding like children with their heads cut off. And it was part of like some sort of ritual, I would call it satanic, right? Like some kind of crazy ritual. And I remember as a young girl, I was scared, and I talked to my mom and I said, Mom, what if somebody tries to attack me, or, like do something to me, put a spell on me? And you know what my mother said to this young girl? She said, no one can harm you without your consent. Your spirit has to be stronger than that. Now, I didn't even know what that meant. Your spirit needs to be stronger than that. But what I do know is that it lit a fire under me in terms of understanding that I have to choose and give consent to people to hurt me. And that's pretty much why I'm so tough and the way I am, is because I don't give consent. If someone is here and deciding to go off on me and they're calling me all sorts of names, oh, Uma, you're such a donkey and this and that and the other, it washes right over me, because I'm not a donkey. Clearly I'm a human being, right? Or I'm not a B word or whatever. I'm Uma. So the attacks, the spells, the rituals, they can't harm you unless you give your consent. And do people give their consent? Absolutely. I've seen people believe in stuff, and that's giving your consent. Like I had this one time, this girl, she was Jamaican, dating a Jamaican guy, and he was messing with a Haitian girl. And the Jamaican girl really, really believed in her heart that the Haitian girl was doing a spell on her. And then next thing you know, she was starting to exhibit some supernatural phenomenon that would, to everybody else, would look as a spell was being placed. But to me, all I could realize was, well, you gave her permission to do this. So this person has this intention towards you, and you're accepting that intention. So now here you go. We have now developed a psychic attack with your consent. Okay. So psychic vampires, psychic attacks, again, cannot harm you or hurt you. So when we're doing these energy things and these exercises, it's not about people attacking you, because you need to, like, in your mind at some point, make a statement. And you can even do it now if you want. You just close your eyes, right? And you just make a statement in your mind. I give no one permission to hurt me or harm me without my consent. Therefore, I am 1,000% protected. I stand in the light, and I have nothing to fear, because my choice is that I am not vulnerable. My choice is that I am a warrior of light, and no one can harm me, because I have not given them consent to do so. And just let that wash over you, right? And that's what I do on a regular basis. It's like, I don't know if some of you saw my video the other day. You can see where I was low, and then you can literally see within the video me start to pick myself back up. And that's what you have to do, is especially when there's, like, say, psychic vampires, or people that want to do a psychic attack on you, you have to be your biggest cheerleader, and you have to let people know this is where you stand and this is what it's about. Okay. So any questions before I move on the psychic vampires and the direct or indirect psychic attacks? We had someone in a class that took this class with me, and they were convinced that their son was possessed, because every day he would walk past a graveyard, and the mother swore that the son picked up a being from the graveyard. And the interesting thing is that graveyards are quiet. I actually like hanging out at a graveyard as a medium. I don't hear any voices in a graveyard, because they're gone. The bodies are just there. It's just the bodies. So, if people were to say, let's go do lunch in a graveyard, I'll be like, oh, finally, relief. I don't hear anything, right? I don't feel anything. So it's an interesting thing. And think about it again. If you are buried and you die, would you want to be sitting around your graveyard the whole time when there's this whole other world that you can explore? There's all these loved ones that you can meet again and be with. Or would you rather just sit by your graveyard just to spook the unbeknownst teenager in love or whatever, right? You got to think about these things, guys. You got to think about these things. And one of my mentors, the Honorable Janet Nohavik of the Journey Within Church, she tells a great story. She went to a house to do a group reading. And when the hostess opened the door, she said to Janet, can you hear them? Can you hear them? Can you hear the screams? And Janet's like, what are you talking about? What screams? And she said, over there, it used to be an asylum, but it's an abandoned asylum now. And there were so many people trapped in there. And can you hear them? They're screaming and whatever. And Janet, I love her, because she's like, are you nuts? No, I'm not hearing anything. There's nobody there. And she said, the same thing I'm saying to you guys. Do you think if I was trapped in an asylum against my will and I die, I'm going to want to stay there? I'm moving on. And that's the way you got to think about this stuff. Like, there is definitely psychic abilities. There is definitely mediumship abilities. There is definitely truth to all the things, about psychic and mediumship stuff, levitation, apports, readings, foreseeing, foretelling, seership, all that is real, but there's a way to do it without all the hoopla of folklore and really just superstitions. Okay. So that's what we're going to talk about with psychic vampires, direct and indirect psychic attacks. Again, nobody can send you anything without your permission. Okay. Now, how does a block actually develop in your aura? So we have a little person here, and then we have the aura around them. For purposes of keeping it very simple, because depending on who you talk to, they'll either tell you there's 7 layers, 14 layers, 28 layers to the aura. I'm going to keep it really simple and just say this person sitting right here is your physical body. This yellow red is going to be your mental body. This green blue is going to be your, this yellow red is going to be your emotional body. This green blue is going to be your mental body. And then this purple on the outside is your spiritual layer. Okay. And that's really how it goes: spiritual, mental, emotional, and then the physical body. So when you, let's say you have lower back pain, and you started realizing, oh, wow, it's been a week now. I really have lower back pain. I need to go see the doctor, right? Chances are that back pain, unless you were like doing serious gardening for 4 hours, usually there's an emotional, spiritual attachment to something that you feel on your body. Like it says right here, physical body blocks exhibit as pain, disease, and illness, right? So what happens is, I wonder if I can insert like image shape line, kind of draw on this. Word art. Let me not do that. Don't worry about it. Oh, so basically what happens is a block starts in your spiritual layer first. And when you don't heal it or address it, then it moves inwards to the mental layer. And then after it moves into the mental layer, if you don't heal it or address it, it then moves into the emotional layer. And again, if you don't address it, then what's going to happen? It's going to land on the body. And I had a client, and I'll share this with you. I'm not going to share the person's name, but basically I that did exactly that. They were married for a very long time. I think it was like 20 something years. She was a stay-at-home mom. The husband was working, and they had 2 children. And she found out he was having an affair. And then, much to her surprise, he decided, well, cat's out the bag. I want a divorce now. I want to actually be with the person I'm having an affair with. So that's a spiritual shock right there, right? So that lodges into her aura. She doesn't deal with it, address it. You know, she's now like in overdrive mode. I got to take care of the kids, got to take care of me, I got to figure out money, I got to figure out this house, I got to figure out this divorce. So now this spiritual block that starts here lodges into her mental layer of her aura. And this is when you start to see people like have insomnia, they can't sleep, they're worried, they're thinking all the time. That's because it's now lodged into her mental layer. She doesn't address it, or she doesn't know how to address it, and it lodges in even further to her emotional layer. And this is where the emotions come in. The crying, the weeping, the anxiety, the depression, right? All that starts to come up now because it's now in her emotional layer. Again, she doesn't deal with it or know how to deal with it. So then it hits on the body, and she might get low back pain, which according to Louise Hayes is fear of not having enough money. That's how a block develops. Okay. So it's so important to do energetic practices every day. And we're going to talk about that, about what energetic practices to do, because that is what's going to prevent the seeding in, if you will, of this block that started in the spiritual layer and come all the way down. Now, the difference between Eastern and Western healers concerning blocks. Western healers, remember, are doctors, hospitals, nurses, right? They address only the symptom addressed with the pain and discomfort. So when, let's say that woman was to go to a doctor and she says, I have low back pain, that's all he's concerned with, low back pain, which, as we've just figured out, is not the start of the problem. It's actually the end of the problem. There's a trail and you got to find that trail, right? You got to find that trail. So the doctor is just going to give her like what? Steroids, you know, maybe a steroid shot or something for muscle spasms, or even recommend surgery. We don't know what the doctor's going to do, but he, again, is only addressing the symptom. He is not addressing anything else. An Eastern healer sees a person as a whole and complete object. We are not the sum of parts. So because that's the way Western healing approaches things. It's kind of like we're cars. So if the engine's out, you fix the engine. If the brakes are out, you fix the brakes. That's the way Western healing works. Eastern healing does not work that way. Eastern healing is not seeing you as a car and you're the sum of all the parts. It sees you as a whole and integrated system. So if someone, which was actually this client of mine, came to me and said she has low back pain, I start going into, okay, in my knowledge, Louise Hayes said low back pain is fear of not having enough money. Why is she worrying about money? And then because I'm intuitive, I'm able to kind of like just say, you know, what happened about 6 months ago? And then she'll count back and say, oh, that was when I found out my husband was having an affair. We're now having a divorce and we're going through a divorce. Immediately I get the picture because she's a stay-at-home mom, right? 2 young kids, fear of not having enough money, having to deal with the mental, spiritual, emotional aspects of what she's going through. That's where the wedge started 6 months ago. So for somebody like that, I might do IET, not Reiki, even though she asked me for Reiki, because IET, you can go through the layers of the aura and remove the blockages through layers, right? So that's why it's so important to have like a blended care team of Eastern healers and Western healers. Because Eastern healers are very much proactive, but they can also lessen a lot of the burden a person's carrying. Whereas with Western healers, they're just addressing the symptom. Okay, any questions on that? Awesome. So here's some things that you can do concerning your energy and in blocking things from going crazy. Because, and I'll tell you in a second about the vibrational scale, but these things are really to just keep your energy clean and clear because you want to stay high vibration. And I'll tell you why in a second. So let's start with the sea salt and the Epsom salts. You guys all know about this. Huge in the community, in the spiritual community. A sea salt bath is amazing. First of all, you feel cleansed taking a sea salt bath. So for me, I tend to not like to have a lot of chemical stuff. I'm a doTERRA rep. So I would take a bath with sea salt and drop some, you know, essential oils of like lavender in the bath water and just sit with the sea salt and the lavender. And that makes me feel really good. The one thing about when you take a bath with sea salt is a lot of times people just get up out of the bath and then go dry off and go to bed. Well, the problem with that is you're still standing in the water that was supposedly meant to take away all this heavy energy on you. So if you're standing in the water, it's going to go right back up. So you have to get into the habit of after you take a bath, you actually go in the shower. You don't have to take a full shower, you know, and like do soap and water and everything. You just need to do a rinse. It's all symbolic. You take a rinse after you take a bath. Now, if you're at work and things are contentious at work, you can take a small bowl or a jar, put some water in it and put some sea salt or Epsom salts in it and place it under your desk, because it creates that same kind of vibrancy when you get to the ocean. And one of the reasons they say the ocean is so healing is because there's a lot of negative ions in the air that's created by the salt water. And that's essentially what you're doing when you put this salt and water in a bowl underneath your desk. You're creating that ionized air that will help deflect anything that is heavy or not for your best and highest good. You can also put sea salt or Epsom salts in a bottle with water in a spray bottle and spray it on yourself, spray it on people, spray it around your home. When I used to be a massage therapist, that was one thing that I did. I would, after I took a shower and I came out before I went to work, once I dried off from my shower, I would just spray myself with this salt water, if you will. And it was like a protection technique for me. And another thing that you can do about sea salt and Epsom salts is you can actually seal your grounds and your property with the salts. What I like to do is I actually like to go every change of season. So like summer into fall, fall into winter, winter into spring, spring into summer, and just walk around my property. I start at the mailbox. I walk around the property and just drop the salt as I'm walking, and I do a mantra. But you can do like a mantra, you can do a prayer, you can do an affirmation, and pretty much what you want to say is, I protect this property, so be it and so it is, right? But remember, wherever you start, you have to end, because you have to close your property when you're doing something like a sealing on your property. Okay. In terms of wearing things, as you'll see, I don't have anything on right now, but many of the people on a spiritual path tend to wear protective charms, bracelets, amulets, talismans, right? Mediums of the old days used to wear a mirrored pendant because it deflects any energy coming towards them. The mirror bounces it back. You can wear protective crystals like hematite, tiger's eye, tourmaline. Anything that's like pretty much black or red is very grounding and protective of your energy. The gypsies of the old used to wear silk, and they would wrap their tarot cards in silk because it binds energy, it keeps it in. Or you can wear like a protective symbol, such as a cross or an Om. And this is the Om. It's a Hindu symbol. And I had the Om and the lotus flower tattooed on me as a means of protection. Okay. Energy wise, what you can do is Reiki and energy healing. So if you're not Reiki attuned, you might want to get Reiki attuned. I know for me, I teach Reiki 1, 2, and 3 about 3 times a year. So you can always catch in one of my classes to take a Reiki class, or I could do like a one-on-one class for you. But basically, wherever you are, if you learn even just like level 1, you don't have to go through to level 2, level 3. Even if you learn level 1, say in Reiki, you will learn techniques that you can use every day to keep your energy high. You can do the bubble of white light protection prayer, which is like you call in Archangel Michael and you ask him to surround you in a bubble of white light, so that as you go out into the world, anything that is like negative coming towards you, whether it's a direct or indirect psychic attack, other people's thoughts, projections, pains, pathways to you, you can just surround yourself in a bubble of white light so that everything just kind of falls off. Sage and incense are really good for cleansing energy, not just on yourself, but also cleansing the house. And Kenyoko-ho, you can Google that because that's a technique that I teach in my Reiki 2 class. And Kenyoko-ho is like dry bathing. And it's basically a way of cleansing your aura from any heavy energy that you've come in contact with. The dial approach is pretty cool. And we're going to do that right now just so you can kind of get an idea of it. So what you want to do is close your eyes and in your mind, imagine 2 dials, like the radio dials back in the day. And on one dial, they both are numbered 0 to 10. So on both dials, see 0 to 10. And on the one on the far right, you'll see it's above it, the label says me. And what number is your dial at? Is it at a 6, a 7, a 10? Right? So you want to pay attention to that, write that down, because if your number is really high, like 7, 8, 9, 10, you need to turn it down a notch because you're walking around just absorbing everything around you. If your number is really low, like 1 or 2, that's pretty okay because you have a buffer up, you have a shield up, which I think we need to have pretty much day to day as you're going around, because you're not really meant to be walking around reading people. Now, the other dial, if you look to it, again, 0 to 10, what number is that at? That dial says other people. So that dial should be down to like a 2 or a 1 or a 3, because you don't need it up at a 10, 9, 8, or 7. You don't, because you're not doing a reading right now. You're just existing. So if you find your dials are set way high, you're probably really empathic, psychic, reading people without their permission and then getting frustrated when you ask things like, what's wrong? And they say nothing, because you know there's something there. So I would recommend you turn your dials down. Okay. And that's something that you can do every day. When you start to feel anxious, panicky, irritated, frustrated, close your eyes, go into your mind. Where are my dials at? Ooh, that's too high. Let me turn it down and bring it into something better. Another great way to protect yourself from energy is just crossing your hands in front of your heart chakra like this. Because your heart chakra is always emitting, right? It's frequency, it's a high frequency, it's the highest frequency you have, which is love. But if you're crossing your hands in front of your heart chakra, you're pretty much energetically and physically saying, I'm not accepting or receiving whatever it is that you're giving. And the biggest way that you can have protection about your energy is just simply by increasing your vibration. And that's why I highlighted it on this PowerPoint, because we're going to talk a little bit more about what that means. So in the universe, there is a vibrational scale. At the top end of it is source, God, the universe, whatever you believe in. It's that higher power. At the lower end of it is lower entities and spirits. Now notice I didn't say Satan, demons, negative entities, negative beings, right? Because I don't believe in that. In all the years of working with this stuff, I don't believe in it. So at the lower end is probably where we have the spirit people who crossed over, who are in that lower realm and they're working through stuff. On the higher end, we have source, God, universe. You're somewhere in the middle. You're not an angel, you're not a demon, you're somewhere in the middle, right? The thing is that depending on what you're experiencing will show you where you are. You don't stay here. This is not like, stuck. It's something that's very much in flow. So when you take a class, you get an attunement, you do yoga, you eat green for the day, you drink lots of water, you actually bump your energy. So you might go from here to like here. And if you are having a bad day and then you just pull out the ice cream and ate that for dinner and you're drinking alcohol and, you're probably Facebook fighting with people or whatever, you can probably drop your energy here. Okay. So all of life is a balance and it's all about raising your vibration. This is why it's so important. Like I always tell my students, it's important who you keep company with. It's important who you keep company with. There are people that I used to hang out with that I don't hang out with anymore. And they're not bad people, but where their attention and focus is on, if mine is not there, then we just don't need to coexist. Right? So you want to be very protective of your energy. You want to be protective of your energy with what you hear on the radio, with what you see on TV, with who you hang out with what you eat. All those things increase your vibration. People always ask me, why do vegetarians or vegans have high vibration? Is it because of the plants and fruits they're eating? Well, it depends. Because I've met many vegans who eat a very high carb diet, right? Pasta, rice, bread. There is no energetic value or very, very little to those items. But now, if you have someone who is eating clean or having like a large percentage of their day is fruits and vegetables and water, they're going to be really high on this scale, because the actual fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, fresh water tend to have higher energetic properties to it, as opposed to something that is cooked or something like that is high carb, that was manufactured or made. It's going to have more energy. So what you eat is a big thing. But think about that, right? It's one or the other. Like if you go through a breakup, you don't want to go out and get a salad. You want to go out and get ice cream. Like attracts like, because if somebody broke up with you, you're down here. You're in hurting mode. You're not feeling the greatest. So you want all the food here that supports you here, which doesn't take a lot. There's not that much energy. But when you're feeling good about yourself and you're running and doing yoga and meditating and coming to spiritual classes, you see, you're climbing the scale. So when it's time to eat, you don't want something crappy. You actually crave. Have you ever felt that? Like you just crave fresh fruits or vegetables or water, or you just are like, I just need something to keep me on this feel good high. So the long story of this with energetic protection for self, if you want to protect your energy, then you raise your vibration, because the truth of the matter is lower energy entities or people or whatever cannot affect you when you're higher vibrating. Because look, you're not together. So if something is down here, if you have a friend who wants to harm you for whatever reason, and she's down here, she has to get to your energy before she can affect you. And then she has to affect you with your consent. So you see how difficult it is? People just can't think and wish you bad, and then it's going to happen unless you're down here. Because if you're down, it's kind of like a compromised immune system. If you're down here, then your energy is compromised. And if people are sending things to you, more than likely, you're going to feel it. Not that you're consenting, but your energy is too low to fight it, or to, have a strong presence to just say, no, this is not for me. So this is why more than anything, it's very important that we keep our energy high. And there's ways that you can do that. So in 2009, when I started my path, Spirit gave me a set of things to do to increase my vibration and protect my energy. And it was things that what they told me to do was to do one thing, one physical method, one mental method, one spiritual method every single day for a month, and then see what happens. And I'm like, who, is going to do that? But I did. And it bumped me so far up that I was just like in amazement. So here are some things, you can write this down. Here are some things that you can do as a physical method every day to help enhance your aura, your energy, thereby keeping you at a higher rate. You can do yoga. You can take a labyrinth. I don't even know how to spell labyrinth. Walk. See, I spelled it wrong. You can work out, go to the gym. You can ride a bike, go skating, clean your house, get enough sleep, play with pets and children. Or some days, because you have to do this for like 30 days in a row. And if for some days you just can't get to doing any of this, then you can just do slow, deep breathing for 10 to 15 minutes. Okay. So what you do is like you make a list of these things or anything else that you want to add in. I mean, somebody might say, I do belly dancing, right? Somebody else might say, I like to dance around my house for 10 minutes. Sure. Okay. But the whole idea here is that you come up with a list of things that make you feel good to move, because the physical methods are meant to move you and move the body, right? So you come up with a list of things to move, and that's going to pick like one thing for the day. The next thing is the mental methods. And this is aimed at changing your mind, restructuring your brain, right? So the first thing I'm going to call in there is access bars. Great way to reset. You can spend the day being positive, being grateful, like doing some sort of exercise. You can read uplifting or inspirational books. Listen to uplifting music or talks, like podcasts. You can chant, laugh, you know, like get together with a friend, pray, avoid negative people or situations. That's going to be great for your mental health. Okay. Take a mental health day, like actually take off from work. A lot of people in America, it's interesting. They have a lot of time off and they don't even use it. They're saving it for God knows what, right? So these are just some ideas that I can share with you about mental methods, things that you can do. And then last one would be spiritual methods. What are things you can do every day to enhance yourself spiritually? You can do a visualization exercise where you surround yourself with white light, kind of like what I did with the Archangel Michael protection prayer. You can pray for other people, give or send healing to others, receive healing, like actually getting a healing session from a practitioner, call in your spirit guides, chakra balancing, meditation, contemplation, right? So these are some ideas of what you can do. And the way the exercise works is you would get like a calendar, and you can do it, you know, we're getting ready to start March. You can get a calendar for March. And on every day, you can have 3 different colored pens or crayons or markers. And one could be for spiritual, one can be for mental, one can be for physical. And every day you try to do one thing off of each plan. And then see what happens. I tell you, when I was doing this work, and I was doing exactly what I was doing, I would pick, you know, some days it would be like I had no time. So I would say, okay, I'm going to bed early because I had no time today to do something physical. Mental. Okay, before I go to bed early, I'm going to spend 15 minutes reading an inspirational book or listening to a podcast. And spiritual, I'm going to pray for other people and send out healing into the universe for them. Now, all 3 of those things happen at the end of the night because I had a crazy bad day, right? And that's how it happens sometimes. But most times you start to want to, because your energy is bumping, you're kind of like, I want to go do yoga. I want to go take a labyrinth walk. I want to do some belly dancing or whatever. You actually start to increase and want to do the things where, you know, my spiritual practice in the beginning went from like 15 minutes a day to 2 hours a day following this protocol, because it was just, the energy started growing in you. And you're like, I want to do more. I want to do more. I want to do more. I feel good. So that's it. That is pretty much my presentation on energetic protection for self. What I'm hoping that you get out of this is that, 1, there is really, truly nothing to protect yourself from, because if your energy is high, your vibration's high, and you haven't given consent to things to hurt you, there is really nothing you need to protect yourself from. Does that make sense? Okay. So I am finished on time, just 2 minutes over. I'm going to stop sharing and stop recording. And then I'm going to open the lines up for you guys to ask any questions. And for those of you that are watching this on replay, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the comment section below. Or if you're one of my students, contact me in the student group. All right. Okay. So ladies, any questions, anything that popped out at you while I was doing this?
I'm ready for the 30-day challenge.
But yeah, right? It's going to bump you up so high. And the funny thing is that was the homework in the class. And I told the students in the class, I was like, do it and then come back in, 30 days and let's see what happens. And every time I do that, you can see half the class did it and half the class didn't. The ones that didn't do it, they were just stressed out. The ones that did it just had like this calm about them. And it's just really amazing to watch. So yeah, please do it.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Awesome. anything else? Anybody else?
Hey, Uma.
Yes.
I know for the in-person class, you had everybody do like bring dowsing rods. And so how did you guys utilize those or in the class?
Yeah, so that's going to be hard to describe because it's all about show. So what I would recommend is like, if you three, you, Leanne, Zaraima, can reach out to the student group and ask people to meet you prior to 10 o'clock and bring your dowsing rods, and then they can demonstrate it to you. Because it only took like 10, 15 minutes to do that exercise. And then they can go over with you what they did, and then you can get to see that. But basically the whole point of the dowsing rods, the way we use them, was to show you just how important it's important to have high frequency, high intentions, and your thoughts affect your energy. And that's the way we use in the exercise. So
awesome. Very cool.
I'm supposed to meet with Amy.
You're going to meet with Amy? Perfect. Yeah. So once you meet with Amy, maybe you can get with Leanne and Steph prior to class, because 9:30 we have chat time, but you guys could be out like in the parking lot, you know, playing around with the dowsing rod. But really just reach out in the group. People are going to be excited to bring back their dowsing rods and use it. They usually are.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Did you do the same activity with the dowsing rods that you did in one class I took, where you kind of walked how far away to see how far your energy was pushing? Okay. That's what I thought it was.
Yeah. Awesome.
So Stevie and I did 2 hours of access bars right before this class.
Oh, nice. You have like a good little trade there. So you're kind of like in La La Land, right? I actually ran 2 people's bars today. So I did 2.5 hours of bars. So that's why I do feel a little spacey. I'm just like, yeah.
We did it upstairs in my house. And when I came downstairs, I was like, oh my, these steps are so much steeper than I remember.
Yeah. I always had trouble driving for a little while, right? When I would leave your place, Uma. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, your eyes would be a dead giveaway. You'll be like, okay, she is not back yet. Awesome. Well, thank you. Let me go ahead and stop live streaming. Stop live stream.